Yeah, it's 7. Okay, I'm just waiting on the TV.
Did you have a card for consent? Just FYI.
Okay, good. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call to order the City Council meeting for the City of Pacifica for July 14th. Roll call.
Councilmember O'Neill is excused. Councilmember Stone.
Here.
Councilmember Degree. Present. Mayor Pro Tem Irvin. Here. Mayor Neihardt.
Present. Please rise and join me in a salute to the flag. It's kind of hidden. We should probably pull this up. Excuse us, technical. There's our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. It isn't on here, but closed session report?
No, you have that thing wired.
It isn't on the agenda. All right. But I just happen to know it needs to go there. That brings us to the consent calendar. First of all, I have a card on the consent calendar, but I also have something that I wanted to read prior to that, just so everybody's clear. The City Council is aware of a protest letter that was filed for item number 11. And that one is on the consent calendar and the one that you're referring to. The award of the construction contract for G. Bartolotto and Company and for FY 2014 for Lindemar Boulevard pavement rehabilitation project. The protest letter claims that the apparent low bidder, G. Bartolotto, did not include the subcontractor's license number in their submitted bid. The city attorney has determined that G. Bartolotto's failure to include the license numbers is not a material discrepancy in the bid and does not render the bid non-responsive. By approval of item 11 on the consent calendar, the City Council would move forward, deny the bid protest, waive any minor irregularities in the bid submitted, and award the contract for FY 2014. Now, does the council want to leave this on the consent calendar? That's my first question before. Councilmember Stone.
I think the city attorney's explanation makes perfect sense, and I don't see any reason that we shouldn't proceed.
Okay. Should we hear in relationship? Did you want to say anything, Karen? Okay. Should we hear about this item at this point? I have one card.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Chris Fogel. Thank you for your time. I am speaking about consent agenda item number 11. Just coincidentally, I have nothing to do with a letter that was filed. I have no knowledge of the letter, and my issue is not with that.
Okay.
But I was looking through the materials provided, the request for proposal and the contract. I just wanted to see what dates were involved and what timeline we were looking at. And the only thing I could see in was the agreement with the consultants that the project would be done by the 30th day of September and wouldn't take any longer than, or their agreement was for about 35 days. So it looks to me, my understanding is that the paving project would take place pretty much the entirety of September, which is fine. I don't have any problems with that, except for, the date of it. And the reason is that we also have the sanitary sewer capital improvement plan. And within that, there's the Lindemar Mainline project, which is Master Plan Project ID 5. And that is slated to begin February of 2015 and will take 4 months. So I just didn't know if there was any kind of coordination with the dates of this project. I'd hate to see Lindemar Boulevard paved. I mean, we've arranged for a lot of funds to get that done, just to have it torn up 4 months later. And I just wanted to bring that to council's attention, and hopefully we can get that coordinated between departments. Thank you.
In terms of still, city attorney, are we still okay leaving this and answering that question?
Yeah, if staff has a response, you certainly.
Well, usually we have a moratorium, so I'm curious. Van? Mr. Ocampo?
The Lindemar paving has been coordinated with my fellow director, Dave Grom, and we're working with them on the limits of the paving. The work that they're doing is actually from the Solo heading heading west. So we're working together, and we'll make sure that there's no conflict. That's one of the things that we want to avoid, is that after you repave, that's when you open the street. We're well aware of that.
There's usually a moratorium. I assume
Yes, there's a
you were
moratorium of
going
3 years. Yes, there's
so
a more.
far.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Councilmember Stone?
I just want to thank Mr. Fogel for bringing that up and paying attention, and that's, we all benefit from that. Thank you. And I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Great. Mayor Pro Tem?
I second.
Okay. I would concur with Councilmember Stone. Thank you, Mr. Fogel, for paying attention, but those are things we like to coordinate. Please vote. Apparently, we're already up there. All right. And that passes 4-0 with one person not here. Okay, so that's the consent calendar, and that brings us to council communications. Anyone? Councilmember Stone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I really don't have a ton to report because we had the long week, the vacation week, and it feels like we haven't been here in a couple weeks, but I haven't had any committee meetings. I did have one, but I was out of town, so I missed it. But I hope everyone had a happy 4th of July. I think I heard great things from our Park and Rec Department from the picnic, and I heard that went well. And there's one other thing I was going to mention, but I can't remember, so it must not be that important. So I'll leave it with that.
Okay. Councilmember Degree.
All right, we had the Economic Development Committee meeting, which was very good, and I'm on the subcommittee, and we presented the plan for in Pacifica. And what I was happy to see is that we got the word out to, if you haven't heard it, please check in. Anybody in the city that has an event that goes on normally, and they did submit them we're trying to see what does happen in Pacifica per month, and then there were some that are hoping to have something and sent that in too, and so you can't see much here, but it basically shows that there's a lot going on in Pacifica that we can all collaborate and coordinate a little better, and there's actually a rather major event. We don't want anything like a pumpkin festival, but event that can be in town and even is in town that we need to be more coordinated about. So that's just in the beginning stages, and so I was very pleased with the progress on that. The Park and Open Space Committee has been having field trips, so we get a real feel for what's going on our agenda, and we had a very successful trip at Maury Point, and you're welcome to attend those. Those are on their website. We put those meetings out there. The housing situation in our county, as you know, housing is extremely impossible, practically, situation, but I do believe that the county is really working extremely creatively and hard and coming up with various and sundry types of opportunities for people. It's nowhere near perfect, but I'm happy to see that the county is very creative and positive and forward-moving on that. I'm surprised that we haven't heard more because we were really expecting, I think you remember, we had a presentation from the airport. I was really expecting to be having meetings and going to the airport and saying this noise is just incredibly terrible. It's worse than what you said. Really, I'm not hearing anything, so unless you're shy about telling me. The bus situation, there's a growing movement among people who do ride the bus and those who want to ride the bus that we do, and I think this is news to nobody, is that public transportation in our city is dreadful and they want action. So I'm sure we're going to hear more about that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Let's see, I attended the beautification committee meeting where we discussed a lot of projects that we're considering going forward in the summer, and that's, I'm really looking forward to seeing some work done there. And I didn't attend too many other meetings. I spent a lot of time with my family in Brentwood. My mom was in hospice, and she passed away. And I just mention this because I really want to thank many community members and people who were very supportive of me during the time. And they, I know I missed several meetings, and everybody was incredibly kind and understanding. And I really appreciate being part of this community. Thank you.
You're going to make me cry. That's the least we can do. Okay. So just to recover from that, you know, you have my heartfelt. Thank you. Okay. With that, I wanted to just tell you about a few things. I had this whole little list, but now I've shortened them in my head. The Beautification Advisory Committee actually has moved ahead on the mayor's Pride Awards to kind of extend this. You know, some of you may have realized that Lindemar Boulevard has improved. We've expanded that. We have a project going on in Sharp Park right now. So we're continuing to move forward on the public spaces, but we want to get people cleaning up and improving their own properties. So we're going to meet this week with the subcommittee, and Mayor Pro Tem Irvin and myself are the mayors, if you will, if you get the sustainability of this particular project. So we're going to be coming forward with that. I have been doing a number of things in the county, but the most important thing I've been doing is continued meetings with folks from mental health and mental health services in the county and bringing them and enhancing them in Pacifica. And so from that, I wanted to let the council know, and I certainly invite the public, that on July 29th, we will be having a mental health services forum with the clinical services manager from the North County Community Service Area for this. They're up at the clinic in Daly City, and that's Tim Holacek, who actually, it turns out he reminded me, was a student of mine. So it's kind of a small world, but we have a lot of resources in the county, and I have been stunned since putting this out how many people don't know about those services. And both Chief Tasa and myself have been kind of testing those services, so I think we're getting more attention for the coast, and I'm really thrilled about that and about that movement. I also and been very pleased with the response from the community on that. I also wanted to just mention that this week is the Association for Bay Area Governments on Thursday night, and again, we're starting to move forward with the whole planning process for One Bay Area, so you're going to be hearing a lot more about that. I've taken a month off here from the City and County Association of Governments, but I really have been quite pleased with all the attendance at Council of Cities, and so I invite you at the end of the month to attend that also, because we'll be looking at incubator businesses in Menlo Park. But then the meeting after that, Kathy's already well on the way. We are planning at Puerto 27 when we host Council of Cities at the end of September. So that's where I'm at. And Councilmember Stone?
I forgot. I just wanted to say thank you for all of your work, Mayor Neihart, on this mental health forum and everything that you're doing with the county, with our own police department. I think we all kind of want to dive into this issue, and you by far are the most prepared because of your professional background, and I'm just very grateful that you're here on this group, because I don't think that the group of council members would be able to do what we wanted to do without you here. So I just thank you so much for taking the ball and running with it, and really reaching out to the community with something very valuable that hopefully will grow within the county, and like we've all talked about, dedicate more services eventually in this rich county that we have to mental health.
Yeah.
So thank you for all of your efforts, and thank you to the staff. This is really coming from Pacifica and the coast side in Half Moon Bay right now, and hopefully it'll keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I should probably tell the council one other thing, that I've actually taken this a bit further, and the folks that do our crisis intervention training for the police, I've been talking to Dr. Kirchberg in Memphis, Tennessee, because he actually works at the VA, but he's this person that founded the Memphis model and started crisis intervention training, and I've kind of ended up coordinating kind of the small national group because I think this is going to be, well, I just got elected president-elect of the American Psychiatric Nurses Association, so I'm going to take this on at a national level, so I'm excited about that. Thank you. Yeah. All right, so with that, any other things from council? So we'll go to public communications. I have a number of cards for oral communications, the first of which is Stan Zevan. It looks like an L, but I know your name.
Zevan.
Yes, it's Zevan. And then followed by Cindy Abbott and Therese Dyer.
Hello, folks. My name is Stan Zevan. I live in Lindamar. I'm here to talk about the San Mateo County Ocean Rise Conference held a couple of weeks ago. But first, a quick note on the general plan article in last week's Tribune. In it, Eric Alm, Caltrans District Branch Chief and one of the major movers in the Calera Parkway Project, CPP, suggested that Pacifica take the lead and examine several different alternatives to the CPP. Let it be noted that this is exactly what the PH1A has been asking of the city for the past several years. Now, in terms of the conference chaired by Jackie Spear, Dave Pine, and Rich Gordon, there were approximately 150 or more people, mostly government workers. The vast majority were from the Bayside. There were very few people representing the coast. Ocean Rise is the most important long-range issue now on the table. You can take the CPP and any two proposed projects, and together they won't have the impact on Pacifica's citizens as the effect of ongoing Ocean Rise. Now, what Ocean Rise projects will be done in the county, as well as money distribution, will be decided in the committees now being formed as a result of this conference. Since a vast majority of the people and money of San Mateo County reside on the Bayside, if Pacifica wants input into these decisions, as well as the ability to protect the city's interests, I strongly suggest that the city find someone, preferably a person who understands the science of water, to sit in on one of these committees. It is imperative that local problems such as groundwater levels, which rise as the ocean rises, be measured, and which beaches, if any, can be preserved. And on a lighter note, speaking of the beaches, in Sunday's Chronicle, Tom Steenstra's written Sunday Drive column this week highlighted Pacifica, and I quote, "In a span of 5 miles of coast at Pacifica, you can access the most diverse stretch of beaches in Northern California." I'd like to suggest that this statement is what the city should be, this is one of the things the city should be focusing on, particularly with more and better signage. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Abbott, followed by Therese Dyer and Roger Medler.
Evening, members of the council. I'm Cindy Abbott, and I'm here tonight as a member of the Pacifica Resource Center Advisory Board, and I'd like to update you on 2 of our upcoming programs. To date, we've enrolled 111 students from 68 families in our Backpack to School program. We'll be packing backpacks on August 9th to distribute to the students on the week of August 11th. We actually work with the schools and teachers to come up with the list of supplies. Over the years, it changes. We've moved from things on floppy disks being a request for the older grades to thumb drives, but interestingly, pencils and markers and things are still important things that can be put in those backpacks. Specifically, we're right now asking for 100 pencil sharpeners, 300 pink pearl erasers, believe it or not, 300 highlighters of different colors, 200 black Sharpies, 175 college-ruled composition books, 30 12-count twistable pencil crayons, 250 4-packs of 3x3 sticky notes, and many other grade-specific supplies. A complete list is posted on the Pacifica Resource website, or you can also call the Resource Center at 650-738-7470. And again, we're looking for those supplies to be in place for our backpacking fun on August 9th. Another program that's coming up here this coming weekend is called Eat Your Greens. And this is a food demonstration program that I'm really excited to say is in partnership with Pacifica Gardens and St. Edmund's Episcopal Church. And it's a program showing people how to make great, tasty food with what they have on hand, including fresh produce and things that we can grow here in Pacifica. Chef Hilary Berg will be presenting our Making Do with What You've Got, which demonstrates making nutritious meals with what you have. The workshop is this Sunday, again the 20th, at 1:30 at St. Edmund's Church, 1500 Perez Drive. Thank you.
Thank you. Tree Steyer, Roger Medler, and then Margaret.
Good evening, Teresa Dyer, 1408 Crespi Drive. I want to talk a little bit about the budget because I save a lot of newspaper clippings and I try to do some comparison and so forth. And here in 2007, it says city facing $1.1 million budget deficit. And last year it was 1.4. So how did we arrive at 4 million deficit now? Well, you know, you had a lot of people working on this budget, using up a lot of staff hours. I don't know how much that cost. But what I'm wondering is why we didn't replace Ritzma immediately. 9 months later, now we're looking for a financial consultant? That doesn't make sense. Then we hired 3 other people that are administrators, we're paying them. And now we're going to hire another consultant to see where this $76,000 went and the loans that haven't been done until 2003. Give me a break. We need a state audit to really get down to this. Go back to the auditors for the last 13 years that we've been paying to be auditors and see, let them find the mistakes and haul the people in that are responsible for this and, you know, let justice take its course. Now, the other thing is, I attended the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Commission down in San Mateo last week, because I have a friend that I served on the grand jury. She serves on it. So she invited me, and the director said that he contacted you about meeting here. You never got back to him. I don't know if that's true. But then last Thursday, I went down to Half Moon Bay where there was over 100 people listening to Steve Wagstaff, the DA, regarding the young lady that got killed there. Pacifica has not had a rally. We have had no meetings with the DA here, and I asked him why, and he said because he was never asked. So I told him I was asking him because, let's face it, Pacifica's not getting its share of responsibility by the county, and you have a duty to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger Medler.
Yeah. Hi, I just wanted to come here and show the public what the City Council and the Police Department of Pacifica thinks a terrorist looks like. And after coming to you for 14 to 16 times asking you for help, this is what you did to me. I don't appreciate it, I don't like it, I'm not going to let you forget about it. So anyway, I made a meeting with, scheduled a meeting with Mrs. Tinfo, and she didn't have the answer to my questions, so she says, oh, no more of those meetings, we're not going to answer any of your questions. So that was her final decision, so I don't know if she's qualified to be a mediator, but she just is not going to solve the problems of the laws not being enforced in Pacifica. So she just refuses to talk, I assume, huh, Lori? I don't know. You and the police chief were visiting the sites. You should go back there again because it's in violation one more time. I don't know what you guys are doing, driving around listening to 107.7 or what? Isn't that the job for the code enforcement and the parking people? I got their number, it's 829-3939. I think you ought to leave that up to them, and you can get back to enforcing your laws, or so you seem to think that business license is proof of a legal business. I think maybe we should see your diploma. So we also got stopped for reading a book out in front of the city hall, which is totally ridiculous. They called the police on us for reading a book. I mean, I hate to get pulled over for reading a book, but you never know. I might be another terrorist before I know it for reading a book. Thank you.
Margaret, and that's followed by Clorinda. I have 2 cards for you, actually, so just one, and then Tammy Dale and Chris Herbert.
All right. Margaret Goodale, longtime resident at this point, and I have a few more specifics about that sea level rise conference. Jackie Spear opened the meeting by saying there is no more critical and crisis-oriented issue facing the region, and we are the most vulnerable county in the state. She also said that every single sewage treatment plant in the county is at sea level and will be affected by this. Rich Gordon said it's imperative that we start to work to plan together for an inevitability, meaning sea level rise. The conference was organized around a speech by John Englander. He's the author of High Tide on Main Street. He spoke again about the inevitability. He also said that all of our storm drains, and this applies to the entire county, are going to be taking silt water back in through them. And we look here in Pacifica at San Pedro Creek, which on a really good high tide has salt water coming back quite a ways already. I personally haven't seen the others, but I've watched the tide flow in at San Pedro Creek. The conference was organized with a couple of federal issues people from doing Library of Congress research. They were looking at property rights and the question about governmental takings for lands that are newly submerged and infrastructure that is newly submerged. They also spoke about the relevance of FEMA and the mitigation programs that will possibly be available. The groups broke up and discussed planning for 3 feet of sea level rise. They said, what would 3 feet of sea level rise mean to your community or agency? What would it mean for future planning and development? They discussed the vulnerability. They said, what questions should be considered in preparing a San Mateo County sea level rise vulnerability assessment? What kinds of adaptations will be needed to protect our communities? The groups that gathered represented 19 of the county's cities, many people there from the east side of the county, where there are places like Oracle, and demand infrastructure support. Generally, people came up with the agreement that 3 feet of sea level rise is a good baseline. We need to start
Margaret,
thinking of 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Clorinda, followed by Tammy Dale and Chris Herbert. Are you coming as a group? Yes. Oh, okay.
Clorinda
Are
Campagna.
you guys all speaking together?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Sort of one after the other.
All
but
right.
It might take just a little bit. I don't know how long it takes.
No, 3 minutes each, max.
So we're here just to give a short, brief thing about the Relay for Life that happened this past weekend at Terra Nova High School. We feel it was very, very successful. It was a very happy time. We all survived in spite of the weather because it was pretty cold. But the Relay for Life of Pacifica, we feel, is a family event that raises money, a big fundraiser nationwide, and we have it here, and it's a family event that raises money to save lives. And I think this last weekend we were very successful, and we want to share why. Everyone that was there certainly enjoyed it, and our mayor, Marianne, gave us a very inspiring talk about herself as a cancer survivor, and Sue Degree was there. She always comes, so does Marianne, and maybe there were others. And I certainly know that there was a great, I don't know the count of the amount of people who were there, but it was really very, very good. You agree, Marianne? Yeah. So each of us will say something. We had great raffle prizes. The kids had fun. That's why I say it was really a family event. And we had wonderful music. People were dancing and just having lots of fun. Our opening ceremony was very inspiring. Our luminaria ceremony was also very inspiring. That's when we light all the candles, and people walk all night, and we've had people did walk all night in spite of the weather, because it was pretty cold and kind of very drippy. So I'll let the next person come on up. And
thank you.
This is Chris.
Yeah, could you reset it? Just a second, Kat. Chris, you've got your 3 minutes now.
Oh, I won't speak that long.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for being there. I'm a cancer survivor also. I really appreciated you there. And I was the event chair. I'm the newbie, and I'm going to do it next year. And basically our event was the community came together and to celebrate the members. We had a fight back against cancer. We had 9 bands that showed up. And we kept in all the people onto their sites, visiting and fundraising activities. We brought, like Clarenda said, the Kids Zone back. The tree came back, thanks to Aaron Clark back there. Thank you, Aaron. Also, there was the table, the single table. We got that one back. I started in 2006, so I saw it when it first started, so I thought I'd try to bring back I listened to everybody, and I tried to bring it all back. So anyway, the luminaria ceremony brings in people for a moving event to remember cancer fighters. We had meals at lunch from the VFW, and the firemen came in at 7 o'clock and cooked us breakfast. But thank you again for coming for us. We really appreciate that.
And
Hello.
Tammy.
Hi.
Yes.
Tammy Dale. And I guess you could say I deal with some of the numbers of the event. Just a few things. We had 20 teams. We had 149 registered participants, but I know that we probably had over 200 because there's a number of people that just come and register the day of. The goal for our event was $50,000, and we raised 51. And generally, in terms of opportunities for us, where we might be looking for some guidance and help in the future, is publicity. We really need to get a bigger word out. In years prior, the event was pretty big, but there was a lot more money spent in prior years, and we're really trying not to spend the money doing the event. But we'd love to get people there and just raise the money and have it all go towards the American Cancer Society. So we're just looking for ways, if there's something that the city can do to help us more with permits or signage locations that we know that we can go to. I called one owner to post a sign there, and she did let me do that. I got the permit, but if there's something I can learn to get a better idea of how to do it simpler in the future, that would be great. And in any other resources that you would suggest besides signage for us, word of mouth, getting it out. So that's it. We want to keep this relay going. And it's a great event. And I did walk all night, and I was cold, and I am tired. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'd like to say
Thanks
just
very
one more
much.
thing. Public Works was just wonderful, led by Paul Lavarini, and it was just, they did a wonderful job. We really appreciate that because they worked night and day for about 3 days. So they did very well. And so thank you so much, and we hope next year Relay for Life of Pacifica will be just as successful and more people come. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Clarinda, very much. Okay, and that brings it back to council. Normally, we don't follow up, but I did want to say one thing to the council, just so you guys all know. The sea level rise was at that same evening we presented at Council of Cities, and I've already been in communication with the executive director for the City and County Association of Governments, and we're looking at the potential going forward for being that committee that works with it for the county-wide resource. We're already formed, so it makes kind of perfect sense. And just to clarify, Steve Wagstaff was actually invited to our meeting, and I have spoken to him directly as we've had numerous meetings about mental health, including a new one that's happening. And I also am going to say thank you to Public Works for Saturday, very much convey our thanks. And last but not least, I want to say that I will begin to read again, I forgot tonight, the note at the beginning of consent about slanderous comments and civility. You can address issues, you can talk about issues, I don't have any problem with that, but the civility is something I'm going to continue to talk about, that we need to disagree with me all you want, but we've got to keep things to be as civil as possible, and accusations that are unfounded about staff and other people have no place here. Thank you. With that, I want to move on to our item for consideration. And that particular item is the adoption of the Climate Action Plan. And I'm excited to have this on the agenda finally after all this work. So, staff report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. In February 2010, the council established a climate action task force made up of council-appointed community members. The task force, working in collaboration with the city and environmental consultant, developed the climate action plan intended to provide policy direction and identify actions that the city and the community can take to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In August 2012, the City Council held a study session to review and discuss the first version of the Climate Action Plan. There was input from the council and the community members at that study session. Since then, the consultant and staff revised the draft Climate Action Plan to reflect input received at the first study session. On March 5th, 2014, the City Council held a second study session to discuss the revised draft Climate Action Plan. Staff provided a memo to the council that summarizes the changes made to the draft Climate Action Plan since the March 5th, 2014 council study session. The revised draft Climate Action Plan and the initial study negative declaration were released on Wednesday, June 11, 2014 for a 30-day public review period ending on Friday, July 11, 2014. Since then, staff has received 5 comment letters and an email. The comment letters were received from Celeste Langell, which will be responded to by our consultant when she does her presentation. There was a letter from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, one from Robert Hutchinson, a letter from Mary Kettleman, and a letter from Paul Stewart of the San Mateo County Association of Realtors. Betty Zito of DNVGL Environmental Consultants, who prepared the Climate Action Plan, is here to present and discuss the Climate Action Plan. Thank you.
Is this on? Okay. Members of the City Council, I'm very pleased to be here today to present our draft, perhaps final, climate action plan. As Lee mentioned, it's been a very long road, and we have had multiple rounds of study sessions and review. So I'll just basically walk through where we are today and what we have in front of you. So the agenda basically covers a little bit of background and then what is actually in the Climate Action Plan and what is actually being committed to by the City of Pacifica in this document. So as many of you know, there are significant body regulatory requirements around climate planning, climate action planning in the state, and centered around California AB 32, the Global Warming Solutions Act which was adopted in 2006, committing the state to achieving 1990 levels by 2020. And that has filtered down to cities adopting a similar goal, but recognizing that it's difficult to calculate your 1990 emissions levels. Most cities and the state has issued recommendations that 15% below 2005 by 2020 is an equivalent goal. And the subsequent legislation adopted supports the AB 32 statewide goals. There's a Senate Bill 375, which is a regional transportation greenhouse gas reduction goals for the area, and then CEQA guidelines that require greenhouse gas emissions to be considered as part of environmental impact reports. So the Climate Action Plan was developed very closely hand in hand with the Climate Action Plan Task Force, and we have at least one member of the task force here today, and their role was to basically serve as the project steering committee for the project and vet the proposed strategies and provide feedback to the consultants on what we are recommending for different greenhouse gas reduction strategies. So as Lee mentioned, there was a study session back in March 2014, and out of that study session, we made several changes to the Climate Action Plan. The main ones are related to removing the Residential Energy Conservation Ordinance and the Commercial Energy Conservation Ordinance, RECO and SECO requirements for time of sale energy efficiency upgrades. And in removing that, we also reduced the greenhouse gas reduction target in the Climate Action Plan from the original 40% to 35%, and recognizing that, that this strategy would no longer be included, so the emissions reductions would be lower as part of the plan. And we also received some informal comments from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. And we, in response to those comments, we provide a little bit more implementation detail in the Climate Action Plan related to different strategies. And another key change was, instead of committing the city to hiring a sustainability coordinator, we modified the description to state that an existing staff person could fulfill that role and monitor the Climate Action Plan. And finally, we added back in Appendix B, which had been removed, and now we're putting it back in, that provides specific call to action to the community. What can residents and businesses do to reduce their carbon footprint on a day-to-day basis? So the project goals are to develop a qualified GHG reduction strategy according to the statewide guidelines, and identify the actionable measures and strategies that will allow you to achieve your target of 35% below 2005 levels. And the state also likes to see that the plan puts you on a path to achieving the ultimate 2050 target of 80% below 1990 levels, which is an executive order. It's not part of AB 32. And part of the plan, we also included some multi-benefits, such as protecting natural resources and promoting the local economy, and then also promoting sustainable development to support the city going forward. So here's just a quick glance at what the 2005 community GHG baseline looks like. This was completed by the Pacifica Climate Committee, a group of volunteers. You can't manage what you don't measure. So that's the purpose of the baseline inventory. And you can see that the majority of the emissions do come from transportation, and then followed by the residential sector, which is not a big surprise. And when you run the numbers, this is what 35% below 2005 levels looks like by 2020. It's about almost 75,000 metric tons CO2, and then 80% below 1990 levels by 2050 is estimated to be about 183,000. So it just gives you a longer horizon for where we're hoping to go. So finally, what does this plan do? It provides sort of a vision for 2020 while looking forward past that year to 2050. And part of the climate action plan, we acknowledge that you can't do everything at once. So we did a cost-benefit analysis. We looked at how much different measures cost and how big the greenhouse gas savings are associated with each measure. And then as a result of that, we phased implementation in terms of near-term, mid-term, and then longer-term. But many of the near-term implementation measures you're already implementing already, and we included a table in the climate action plan that summarizes which ones are already ongoing. So, but we wanted to take a somewhat conservative approach. So these are the near-term measures. Many of them will look very familiar. How can we increase recycling, divert waste from your landfill, which is a big source of methane emissions, a potent greenhouse gas. Smart growth development, water conservation, reducing transportation emissions related to safe dropping your kids off at school. So that also has a co-benefit of reducing congestion around your schools. And energy efficiency, and of course improving transit service to the city. And then for the midterm measures, these were, for the most part, these are lower emission savings. What can the city do to reduce emissions related to their fleet? How can we make the streets more friendly for walking and biking? And then, promoting renewable energy and more energy efficiency. So finally, we only had 2 measures proposed for the long term. Establishing a zero waste policy. This is related to municipal operations, and that has a longer horizon of by 2030. And then preferred parking policies related to electric vehicles. So promoting decarbonization of your transportation sector. Finally, how does it all roll up together? So, luckily, City of Pacifica is not doing this in a vacuum. There's a lot that the state is doing, and the City of Pacifica gets to include this in your forecast for 2020. So we include 4 statewide initiatives around the Pavley bill to reduce tailpipe emissions, low carbon fuel standard, the 33% RPS that reduces the carbon content in the electricity, and then Title 24 and Cal Green codes which address new construction and energy use in new construction. So together combined, the statewide emissions actions combined with the city led emissions reductions lead you to approximately almost 80,000 metric tons CO2, which is above what you would need to achieve the 35% below 2005. So finally, oversight and monitoring is a very important part of the climate action plan because, ultimately we do the climate action plan at a point in time, right? And things change. The economy changes, technology changes, So we want to recognize that, and we want to be proactive and dynamic. So that's why included in the climate action plan are public education activities, because there's only so much the city can do. There's a lot that the community has to do too. And the green building regulations are always changing. And then you also have a very active community. So, engaging them in developing these new programs and policies. And finally, somebody has to have oversight of the climate action plan. So we do include a role for somebody to do that. And then tracking your greenhouse gas emissions every 5 years is a requirement to make sure that you're on track. So actually, most recently, DMVGL did complete a 2010 emissions inventory update, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. So that's the end of the overview of the Climate Action Plan itself, and I did want to take a moment to address some of the comments that we received from Celeste Langille. So she has 3 main points, and I'll just walk through them one by one. So the first was a question about the business as usual growth. So it is very difficult to forecast what emissions will be in 2020. But there are methodologies that have been adopted across many, many cities, and we utilize a very common methodology of population estimates based on the Association of Bay Area Governments. So that's a common data source that I would say most cities in San Mateo have used. So, you know, there has been a little bit of fluctuation in residential electricity usage, so there was a comment about that. But as I mentioned, we recently completed the 2010 emissions inventory for Pacifica, and we actually found a 1.3% decrease in emissions related to the residential sector from 2005 to 2010. So, so that's why when we looked at this again, we thought, well, you know, the forecast for the residential sector could be high for 2020 or it could be a little bit low for 2020. It's a little bit hard to know, but based on the 2010 emissions inventory, we believe that Pacifica is still, you know, basically on track to have a relatively low 2020 increase in residential in the residential sector. So the second point was related to the emissions savings calculations related to various measures. And we based our calculation methodology on the California Air Pollution Control Officers Association, CAPCOA. They have a very large manual for calculating your emission savings. And, you know, emission savings estimates are inherently a little bit imprecise as well. I mean, I think that's acknowledged throughout. It's a little bit hard to say exactly what you'll get, but we used a method that is documented and it is based on some literature review of other communities. So that was our approach. And then finally, there was a comment about how the 2020 emission savings were calculated relative to, you know, how we presented annual savings. And the way we present the annual savings are that they are average new greenhouse gas savings every year. So they're not intended to say that over 10 years, a single household you know, multiplies their savings by 10 years. You know, it is intended to say that every year we have new participation. So if you have a program, like a water conservation program, you know, in year 1, you're going to have a certain level of participation, and in year 2, you're going to have more homes participating. And it might vary from year to year. But the annual savings estimate was intended to show, you know, on average, what might be a reasonable savings from this measure. So yeah, so I just wanted to cover a couple of those points, and I think that's it, and we'll just open the floor up to questions.
Okay, questions from council? Or do you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I just wanted to clarify that what Betty was referring to is a challenge by Celeste Langille to the negative declaration that we're asking the council to adopt tonight. And I think what you heard from the consultant is that none of the issues raised by Ms. Langille's last-minute letter rose to the level of providing any substantial evidence that would negate any approval of the negative declaration tonight by the council.
Well, actually, I was going to ask a question of this. You've been a consultant for other cities, I assume. Mm-hmm. Other cities in San Mateo County.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yes. And so you're probably aware of the model that CCAG has been, the City and County Association of Governments, has been involved as being kind of the standard for San Mateo County.
Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to make that clear, that we didn't pull this stuff out of thin air, that it is actually common practice and based on things that are used widely, not just with San Mateo County, but throughout the Bay Area. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
I just had a question in regards to, so now we're looking at 35% reduction. Have other cities met that percentage in San Mateo County, or is it about on par, or how does that rate compare to other cities in the county?
I would say it is a little bit more aggressive than other cities in the county.
Are any other cities more aggressive than in Pacifica?
I would say Pacifica is the most aggressive in the county.
Or its greenhouse gas emissions reductions goals?
But I will say that City of Palo Alto, which is
Yeah,
just over
I-
the border, they have
Yeah.
they've already achieved like a 40% reduction in their emissions.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I had a couple questions. I was wondering, just wanting to get your opinion, do you feel like we've spent adequate resources and time and energy considering maybe rebates, weatherization, all of those things? How extensively have we looked at potential incentives or things that people can do in their own homes to reduce greenhouse gas emissions?
Well, one can always do more, right? That's the way it always is. But, there are many PG&E rebate programs that are available to the community, and I would encourage Pacifica to look at ways to sort of co-market and co-brand a lot of those programs, and potentially, and these are things that the Climate Action Plan sort of outlines for Pacifica to do, put the information on your website, co-market, maybe a letter from the mayor saying, we encourage you to participate, and so that those types of outreach and inviting PG&E to come and maybe do workshops here. So, the Climate Action Plan supports that type of marketing and outreach and leveraging
Do that one.
and leveraging existing third-party funds, that aren't, that's essentially available already.
That's great. And then another question, in terms of, I saw that we went from providing incentives potentially for solar. That was one of the things I think we brought up at the last meeting, and now we converted it to encourage. And I was wondering if somebody could remark on why we made that change. Is that direction you need from council, or what caused that change?
We don't have any.
Yeah, I don't recall the conversation exactly, but there was a gentleman here from the solar industry at the study session who was talking about permit process and fees and that sort of stuff. And I think what we found was that our permit fees are actually on the lower end of the scale already, and that we weren't necessarily in a place, given our other considerations that you're well aware of, to necessarily go there right now. It doesn't mean that we can't go there in the future, however. So I think that's something we do want to keep our eye on. And just to follow up on what Betty was saying about incentives generally, I think we're always looking for those things. Okay. But it's a matter of finding them, finding that third-party funding or whatever else is out there. And it's very hard to know what's going to come up and what's available to us.
Okay, great, thank you. And one other question. In terms of economic growth and some of these actions that we have, is there anything that we should be aware of that potentially could cost the city more money because of, an action item that we have here? Is it pretty fiscally neutral, or are there things that we need to be on the lookout for that you can think of? Like,
I think we're in a pretty conservative place in many respects in terms of the programmatic parts of the plan. Obviously, we talked about RICO and SECO. That would have been a much different sort of thing. That would have been something that we would have to roll out and probably would have involved some resources on the part of the city. That's not part of the plan now. Not to say that it won't be necessarily in the future. And I think, as we mentioned at the last study session, it's entirely possible that the state of California will actually require that in the future. So it's not something that we're going to have an option to do or not do. It's just something that's going to be required as part of every house sale that goes on in California. So I think we're okay right now. I think that's my sense, and I think Betty agrees with that.
Thanks. And one last question. I noticed, or maybe I might have missed it, but just wondering if you talked all about planting more trees or anything like that. I know we've already had this discussion, but I was just thinking about things like that going forward, or if other cities have done things like that.
I think that's right. We don't have a specific shade tree measure in this climate action plan, but it is potentially part of the making streets more walkable and pedestrian friendly, so kind of improving the streetscape in general and making it more pleasant. So,
okay, thank you.
Councilmember Stone.
Thank you. One of the things that jumped out to me on when we were accumulating to get to the 35% was the high quality development, right? And the what's the other word that's used? Sorry, I'm blanking on it. But the I can't remember. But the pedestrian friendly and higher density developments. Can you talk a little bit about that and what we have in store for? I think that's a medium term goal. So. Pardon? The smart growth developments. Thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about what that would entail going forward, what we can expect, and in the medium term, when do we have to kind of get going on that to hit medium term as opposed to long term?
So the smart growth is based a little bit on the general plan update that's currently under development, and so and some of the policies that were proposed as part of that process. But fundamentally, smart growth is about increasing density in specific areas of the city, and also encouraging mixed use, so that people, they don't have to get in their car to get groceries. They can just walk outside. There might be a corner store. There might be a cafe. So sort of putting people and the places they want to be a little bit closer together. I think that's the fundamental concept behind smart growth, and also creating density that helps make transit more cost effective, so that you have more people around a single bus stop, and then that makes it easier to design a bus line that has a higher ridership number, and then you also feel safer because you're not waiting at a bus stop by yourself. So there are a lot of aspects of smart growth that are around that kind of sort of commercial, residential, mixed use, density, and being close to services.
Yeah. Have you reviewed our bus lines that we have currently?
We did not review it. It was a little bit outside the scope of sort of what we're able to do, but we do think that that's an important step to be taking, and to the extent that you can partner with Samtrans and sort of, kind of encourage more frequent bus service or suggestions for improved, routes and lines, that I do think that's an important piece.
So we have, extremely low density here in Pacifica, right? And, I think a lot of people are concerned with, having more people have access to public transit, which, it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing, right? Is it ridership, or is it that the lines and the accessibility and so on and so forth? Even Councilmember Degree in our comments earlier today mentioned our Samtrans service. Can you tell me about density and why density is important to achieve a healthy bus service?
I think it is all around ridership. So if you have a very dense, if you have a more dense area, then there are a lot of things that go hand in hand. So parking policies is another important thing, because if parking is easy and it's free, people are more likely to drive. But when you have density, I think inherently you have a little bit less parking, and so it sort of makes the time benefit of taking transit more attractive relative to single occupancy driving.
Can you not hear Councilmember Irvin?
Yeah, a little bit. Okay, sorry. Yeah. But I think really fundamentally, having more density helps transit, because you can have one bus line and 20 people get on versus 2 bus lines and 10 people on each line from a less dense area. So that's why it's more cost effective for Samtrans to run bus lines in more dense areas.
It was funny, when I was a kid, I remember like when recycling was like the new thing and all that. Like this is like under 10 years old, I remember. And they were talking, the environmental things seemed to be like build stuff but build it smaller. I'm guessing that's changed now. Is it?
Well, build stuff and build it smaller. So
as opposed to the density and like
density, then
and more open space.
Have smaller, you might have more apartments or more condos. So you do have smaller units, and that's something that we're seeing in Redwood City. They're very committed to higher density around their Caltrain station, and so their average square footage of housing unit has plummeted. I was really surprised. Less than 1,000 square feet. So you do also have efficiency of the housing unit itself in terms of materials, in addition to the transportation patterns.
And sorry, one last question. So with density, what exactly are we talking about? Like how many units in a space? Like what are we talking about when we say density?
Well, George, I think you've been working recently with the general plan related to some of the density and how many units we're talking about.
Typically density is characterized as a unit per acre sort of measurement. And I think there's a lot of things that converge here that we have to deal with, not just the climate action plan, but housing policies that we're also having to respond to at the same time, also mandated by the state. And I can tell you that the kind of densities they're looking for affordable housing, which in many cases is also going to be a magnet for transit and other things, is up 40 units an acre or more for them to consider that to be have the potential to be affordable.
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking at, and I think that is the future of this area if we're going to be healthy and still include everybody versus the alternative, which is, we don't have the variety of housing for everybody that is needed.
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely like a rethink here because we're talking about more density and more things in one place to encourage people to get out of their cars and do all that. So thank you for those answers. Appreciate it.
Just as one little follow-up to that, what you really just described was the whole thing behind priority development areas, is to drive density to, in transportation and connect those two. And just because we talk about density up here, I'm assuming we don't have to have it everywhere. We can have it in key places, and that you wouldn't probably put it in the middle of a residential area that we typically have now, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, just so we don't, I can hear it now. We're talking about areas that can handle it. All right, Councilmember Degree.
I have a question, if you can. Recommended was a sustainable coordinator, and is that typical in the cities that you know about? Is that how they're working things, and especially Palo Alto doing so well, is that how they're doing?
Yes. So Palo Alto now has a chief sustainability officer who reports directly to the city manager. But, it's very important that somebody's paying attention to the climate action plan. So I think that having a sustainability coordinator is an important role to make sure that, the things that we've put in here are, in fact, being implemented. So when we talk about marketing the existing energy efficiency rebates and incentives, the sustainability coordinator would potentially have that role.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, I have 3 cards on this. Is that right? Okay. Sue Vaterlos, Paul Stewart, and Margaret Goodall.
Sue Vaterlos speaking as an individual resident of Pacifica. I'd like to commend you again for removing the SECO and the RICO from the climate action. And I'll be brief, and we would be happy to distribute information to people about voluntarily reducing the carbon footprints. We are all environmentalists too, and appreciate this. Thank you.
And Paul Stewart?
Mayor Neihardt, members of the council, my name is Paul Stewart, and I'm here representing the San Mateo County Association of Realtors. You've all received our detailed comments, and so I will just go to the specific recommendations for your consideration. Number 1, the negative declaration is adequate. We've reviewed it, and we encourage council to take action tonight in finding the neg deck is adequate and adopting the climate action plan. Number 2, we would also like to thank you for having the vision to rescind the RICO and SECO proposal, given the impact that would occur. Number 3, when it comes to encouraging voluntary energy audits, retrofits, and rebate programs to curtail gas and electricity usage, I would once again offer the offices of SAMCAR We partner right now with Energy Watch San Mateo, Energy Watch California, and with PG&E to make this information available to our realtor members, but also to home buyers and home sellers. Because there are rebate programs out there for weather stripping, for rudimentary energy conservation, and for advanced energy conservation. And we would be more than happy to work with the city on getting that information out to the realtors that work in or are located in Pacifica. Regarding ocean rise, one of the points I'd like to make as part of our comments and recommendation is that not one city, going way back on this issue, has considered a sea level rise certification for new construction, new non-residential construction, remodels, rehabs, rehabilitations, or indeed existing home sales. We would also ask, or have the council consider, that when you are looking at reductions through the transportation, whether it's through encouraging people to get out of single occupant vehicles and so on, that tied to the hip, and I recognize what I'm about to say is quite controversial, but tied at the hip with greenhouse gas reduction in Pacifica is the commitment to and support of widening State Highway 1. And the council needs to move on that with some alacrity. Lastly, we would ask that the council consider, as an adjunct to the adoption of the Climate Action Plan, to delete any necessity to preserve, replace, or acquire a permit to remove eucalyptus trees. And the reasoning for that, which I think can be backed up through your fire services department, is the fact of what damage they can cause. Thank you.
Thank you. And I further read Margaret's card here, and she just says to please record her request to adopt the Climate Action Plan. So I noticed that she was gone. I have no other cards here. Anybody else that wants to speak? I'm thinking about Carlos has spoken a lot. If you speak now or forever. Okay, all right. With that, I'm going to bring it back to council, and I just want to say, I know Councilmember Stone has his light on, and I just want to say thank you for all the hard work on this. This has been a long time coming, and I am extremely pleased. Councilmember Stone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, what? Are we over 3 years now on this working? Yeah, over 3 years. So the good thing about a 4-year term is that you get to see some things finished. That's nice. So that's good. So thank again to the committee, Carlos, the chair, and to the rest of the people that worked on this, all the staff, the consultants that brought this forward. And I'm really happy that we're able to strike a balance between the most progressive percentage in the county. We won't talk too much about Palo Alto, but they're way down there. No, but so the most progressive number in the county, and but also too, I think it's I think the council was very pragmatic about trying to look out for the impacts to people, and I think those impacts are at a minimum. So we can encourage people to do more, but also to we'll have to put forward our policies as well. So yeah, I'd love to make a motion when the time's ready, but I'm sure everyone has a comment. So go ahead.
Councilmember Degree.
Right, I appreciate all the very hard work that has gone into this. Couple things. We always worry about something being on paper rather than actually happening. And so having a coordinator in there and whether we'll actually get one is a concern. And the fact that we will annually evaluate and track reports, those are very important. I think that will help with making sure that it doesn't just stay on paper. Transportation, as I've said a million times, is a big thing, and that's the multimodal transportation and how we can be progressive and very proactive on that, which would include, again, visiting the school situation. And sometimes I think cities take too calmly things like, well, that's a school bus issue, and then we quiet down and don't do anything. I'd rather see more proactiveness. I don't know if anybody's realized it. Do you really see very many school buses anymore? A lot of those school bus contracts are gone. Sea level rising, I do feel that based on the numerous events I've gone to, put on by the county supervisors and others, that sea level rising is a huge issue that we must address as quickly as possible. Whatever that's going to mean, but it's going to mean something, and I'm actually even concerned not only about climate action, but liability to ourselves and our residents if we don't make sure immediately that we know what the possibilities are that will affect us, so that we don't do climate action, pro-action that actually doesn't achieve or will be washed out, shall we say, by what we do. So those are just my comments, but I'm glad that we're moving forward. And again, I want to thank you for all the hard work. And there are collaborations such as traffic congestion management. They have a lot of things for multimodal and the PG&E credits, and also what SAMCAR just offered. So there's a lot of possibilities for collaboration. And over the last 2 years in the SamTrans diction, shall we say, ridership is no longer the sole criteria. Need is up there as well. And that was brought specifically because Pacificans and co-siders have harped that, we're never going to be able to have the ridership of an El Camino.
Right. Very good. Mayor Pro Tem.
I again just want to thank everybody that's been involved in this plan. I know it's been a lot of hard, extensive work, so thanks to staff and thanks to the committee. It's a really important document that as we move forward, I'm sure it's going to be a living document that will change as things change in our environment, And one thing that really strikes me is what a beautiful job you did on the balance. We, all of us, every single one of us in this room and anywhere can do more than we're doing right now to lower our greenhouse gas emissions. I often think, I drive to work by myself at times. I could carpool, or the people that carpool could take a bus, and the people that take a bus could ride a bike, and you can go on, and you always find what's going to work for your community and you. It's never ending. So again, I just think you just did a very nice job at finding a good balance that we can all live with right now. And if we need to move forward and do additional things, we can do that. And the state, I think, and the county is also going to be, creating new things that we're going to be regulated to do. So I think we take it one step at a time. We're being very progressive. We obviously care about our community, and you've shown that very, very beautifully here. So thank you.
Okay, I have just a couple of things to add, besides adding my thanks to the committee, Carlos particularly as the chair, and I hope you are willing to stick your neck out and do it again, but because this is an ongoing process. This is the beginning. This is just one plan, and the 35% is a beginning. To get to 80%, we're going to have to do more stuff. I think the state will take the lead on some things. I think we will take the lead on some things. It's interesting to watch folks pull things out of context and make decisions about, but I just was sitting here, and off the top of my head, on a regular basis as chair of CCAG, the City and County Association of Governments, Safe Routes to Schools is basically about climate action. It's about getting kids to walk and getting people out of their cars and making that happen. The 21 Elements Plan is about housing in the Bay Area and really focuses on some of the things that we just talked about. There is a variety of sustainability measures. I can't even begin to describe all of them that we're involved in there, as well as the Association of Bay Area Governments. Congestion management. Sue, you mentioned this. The Congestion Management Committee has a ton. We set the standard with our flexible routes in SamTrans, and now SamTrans has found those so successful in Pacifica that they're expanding into San Carlos and some other areas. So those have been really wonderful. Energy Watch, I can't describe to you the numbers of things where we have been really pushing the envelope and the county has come along. And one of those has actually been with sea level rise. We've been talking, I'm always reminded when I was first on council and Councilmember Degree and I were going through the apartment buildings with Congresswoman Spear on Esplanade, and looking at the real dramatic impact that winter of the cliffs and the erosion. And coastal erosion and sea level rise makes coastal erosion worse. So I've had individual meetings with Supervisor Pine. He's also on ABAG with me, and we've spent long car rides talking about how, well, gee, now that the bay is threatened and the bay side is threatened, now you're paying attention to the coast. And it's true. It took the impact of that monetary loss to get people to finally pay attention out here on the coast. And so I think that San Mateo County, being a structure that is very, very different with how we work together in our 20 cities and our county, I think we will once again bind together, because we are one of the most threatened areas on the entire California coast side, and the bay definitely. So I see this as only the beginning. I see this as something that we will continue to move forward on. I think we do have to, given all the pieces that I just described, appoint at least a point person for this that's going to be the sustainability coordinator, and look to a richer time when we have a little more resources financially to have an actual one, because many cities do have whole departments. I'm always stunned at the green department, the energy department, the variety of things and resources in wealthier cities that they have. We had to make some of the choices that Councilmember Stone talked about because we had to consider our financial resources. But despite that, despite our financial limitations, we're still taking one of the, if not the most aggressive approach in San Mateo County. And that's only because we're willing to work together and compromise. And I think that is the key. That's the essential. It's how we move forward in every single way. We can advocate for our points of view. We can advocate strongly, but having that key is really what makes it. So I assume that your light is on because you want to do something about this.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to move that the City Council adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Pacifica adopting the negative declaration for the City of Pacifica Climate Action Plan, and adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Pacifica approving the City of Pacifica Climate Action Plan.
And Mayor Pro Tem.
I second.
And with that, let's all please vote. Oh, sorry. That is just not at all what I would expect.
It couldn't go.
We're going to try this one more time.
When I looked down, it said yes. I don't know how it got to
Okay,
no.
please vote once more. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again. And as we close tonight, I just wanted to close in, I already had that, close in the memory of a very incredible legislator and assemblyman, and that's Ira Ruskin. We really will miss him and his leadership, and he has done much for the state of California and for the Bay Area, and I just want to close in that commemoration. Thank you. Good night. All right.